Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm reviewing Crying in H-Mart by Michelle Zauner, and I gave this book a 4 out of 5. Today, my Booktuber Shoutout is Reading Off Grid. She started her Booktube channel only this year and she has some great content. She has a mix of TBRs, hauls, top 10 lists, and also wrap-ups. I'll link her channel down below if you want to check her out. And as always, I will always appreciate if you like my channel to hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you've read this book, Crying in H-Mart, I would love to hear your reviews and comments down below. This book, Crying in H-Mart, it was published in 2021, and the genre is a memoir, which is my favorite genre of all the genres out there. And specifically, it's about the Asian American experience and the culture clash being Asian but raised in America and having that culture and conflict with your parents. About the author Michelle Zauner. So she's also a 1989 baby, same age as me, and she was originally born in Seoul, where she lived for her first 9 months of her life. And then her mom and her dad, who met in Korea when her dad was a car salesman, moved to Oregon, specifically Eugene, Oregon. Her mom is Korean and her dad is American, so she was raised full American but had this huge tie to her Korean culture through her mom. In her teenage years, she picked up a guitar, asked her mom for it, and she was really determined to be a musician, which is a huge point of contention between her and her mom. And because of that huge conflict between her and her mom, when she went to university, she went as far as possible to the East Coast to Pennsylvania. Michelle has been part of multiple bands, but her biggest successful band, which she's still part of right now, is called Japanese Breakfast. And it got popular because when her mom passed away, she grieved and mourned her mom's death by writing a full album, and then it got picked up, and then that's how her band got super popular, and that's the band she currently performs in right now. About the story and the characters or the people in Michelle's life, I kind of touched about in the previous section about the author, just because this is a memoir. So for this style review, I'll kind of just talk about the people in her life, and I'll kind of just sum up the memoir as well. So first we have Michelle, who I already talked about, and we have her mother, who is Korean. And in the book, it's really awesome because, or for me it was really awesome because she really acknowledges the impact her mom has on her Korean side of her. You know, her mom cared a lot about her skincare. She cared a lot about the way she looked. She cooked a lot of Korean food, and like from my experience in Korean culture, like food is very important, very ingrained into your everyday life, and there's certain dishes for every occasion. And Michelle talks about the familiarity of these dishes that her mom made for her birthday when she was sick, and also the act of going to H-Mart, which is a Korean supermarket that's in America and also big in Korea, and how that really is a big part of the culture. And in Korea, like, she talks a lot about banchan, which is a lot of side dishes. So in Korea, when you have like your main meal, you also have a bunch of side dishes, and sometimes like the great part about your meal is the side dishes, because it'd be like 10 or 15, and it's your usual typical one. Like if you're familiar with Korean food, there's kimchi, but there's also like radish, there's seaweed, there's sardines, and the way she describes the food is just a big part of the book, which I really enjoyed. And it also built about her mom's relationship to Michelle. And one thing she talks about her relationship to her mom is her mom was very overbearing, and the way she showed love is like by caring, but in like maybe not your typical Western fashion. It'd be words that maybe sound mean objectively, but the best way that her mom knows to show that she cares. And that's a very familiar experience that I have, having a Chinese mom. You know, my mom, like, she'll always comment on the way I looked, which maybe would seem kind of like negative, but it's her showing that she like observes my changes, she cares about me. She'll see that maybe when I gain weight or when I lose weight, that maybe something more is going on in my life. So I can see that parallel with Michelle and her mom. There's also her father, who is American, and when her and her father become caretakers for her mom, she kind of talks about how her father doesn't really show up, but she understands that her father had very like I guess unfortunate upbringing. Her father was arrested, dealt with drugs, and that kind of stuff. So it's interesting to see that when her mom became sick, that she kind of became like the main caretaker, and that her and her father's relationship kind of became like oh, like what's gonna happen when mom dies. So it's very interesting to hear that because she's very honest about the shortcomings that her father has, and how when her mom got sick, that her mother became stronger and became like a force to reckon with, whereas like her and her father kind of fell apart, which I thought was very interesting. Michelle also talks about her boyfriend, who later becomes her husband, and how he is very supportive and always a pinnacle part of her life, which I thought was really great. And she kind of talks about how they met, how she chased her husband because her husband really friend zoned her, which I thought was really funny and refreshing to hear because usually in popular media, you always hear about the boy being friend zoned. So I thought that was very interesting. And other main characters in her life that Michelle talks about in the book is her Korean family. So this would be her aunts back in Korea who come to America to help caretake her mom, and also any Korean friends that her mother had in the States that also came to America. And these Korean family members or family friends are important because they make Michelle either feel supported or make her feel ashamed for being not Korean enough. So I thought these are very interesting people in her life that she brought up and how they affected her when she was a caretaker for her mom. The three common themes I found in this book, the first one being the connection to our culture. So if you're someone like Michelle or like me who grew up ethnically from a different part of the world, but grew up in North America, Canada, or America, I think there is always this conflict and this kind of like ongoing like movement when I was growing up from being like, oh, I'm Canadian, but this tie to this Asian part of me. And Michelle talks about that quite a bit, an internal struggle. And I feel that too quite a bit, even though I'm full Chinese. And I've said in previous videos, like, even though I'm full Chinese, because I was born and raised in Canada, if I went back to China, I would feel Canadian. Like, I have no tie to that culture. So it's really cool that Michelle identifies that and she really strives to be connected to her culture, which is very inspiring to see. Because for me, I feel fully Canadian, and I feel definitely I'm have this like in between culture, but not as strong as her. So if you're someone that is ethnically a different culture but raised in North America, I would love to hear your experience being kind of between two cultures. Another common theme, which obviously is no surprise as I talk about she becomes a caretaker for her mom, is the theme of grief and mourning and how one deals with that and how one navigates that. So this book is really good because Michelle is very honest about her experience, and some parts of it I feel like, whoa, that's like an inside thought that everyone has but people don't share. So I really admire that she shares and be vulnerable about all the anger and all the negative side about grief and mourning and being a caretaker. And the last common theme that Michelle talks about in this book is definitely the importance of the community around us. And in this sense, in this book, it really talks about the lack of community she had for a bit. Figuring out wanting to be a musician, trying to figure life out, having a tough time, and being a caretaker for her mom and having her dad having all these shortcomings and not being able to step up as a partner to her mom and also as a father, and also being left out from the one American friend, I believe her name was Kai or Ki, where she made Michelle feel guilty for not being Korean enough. So this book talks about, I guess, you see examples of a lack of community and how important it is to have a community. Things I didn't like about this book. So there were two major things I struggled with this book, which moved it from a 5 to a 4, which I was kind of surprised by because I knew so many people love this book and a lot of people were moved by this book, but these two things were a bit distracting for me. So the first one for me was the writing style. I found it difficult to stay engaged despite the very interesting and riveting material. I found her voice wasn't very strong, and I know she's not like a professional writer, so maybe that's why, but it felt very casual and I really struggled with wanting to keep reading. But what compelled me to keep reading was the material. So that was the one thing I didn't like that was prevalent throughout the book. The second thing I didn't like was Michelle was very honest about the relationship between her and her mom and all the confrontation, all the conflict in her youth. And it was really hard for me to read her teenage angst that bled into her 20s and just her not appreciating or acknowledging her mom, because that's something that I have also struggled with too. And I guess in a way it's good that she's so honest about it, but it's really hard for me to read it and her having it in a book and just witnessing someone else going through that. Like, I know I should respond as, oh, it's so relatable, but I find it really hard that, now it's out there, kind of like dirty laundry for everyone to read. There were many things I enjoyed about the book, which I obviously kind of touched on just from describing the memoir. Is I really enjoyed her honesty about the clash of cultures. I found that very relatable. I also love how she commented on the privilege of growing up bilingual. How, you know, there are some words in Korean that she just knows that she doesn't have to translate into English. She just says it, she knows it, it's very familiar. And even if you translate to English, the English substitute for it isn't as good as the Korean word. So I love that she really appreciates, and the way she worded that is very eloquent and something that I really relate to as well. Other things I really enjoyed about the book is her honest views about being a caretaker and how difficult it can be, especially when it's your parent. And I also love that eventually that she had epiphanies on the importance of Korean culture in her childhood, and how she, even after her mom dies and loses that link to the Korean culture, she still decides to be linked to it through eating, through cooking, and that kind of stuff. And one thing that I really enjoyed about the book was that I actually lived in Korea for 2 years. In 2012, I can't believe it's 10 years ago, and it just had so many nostalgic feels when she talks about Korean food and about like when she went to Seoul and Busan and Jeju, her family and her husband, and you know, just all those things. Like, I love Korea. It's a great country. There's so many great cities. It's such a mix of technology, advance, and also culture. So it's just super, super nostalgic for me. On Goodreads, this book got an average of 4.3 out of 5. I believe it's very accurate. Reasons why people don't like it was very similar to me, was they felt the writing didn't flow, her voice wasn't very strong. They felt it was very personal, which isn't a bad thing, but it's bad in the sense that it felt almost like a long journal diary. And maybe the memoir would have been served better as a bunch of essays or articles. And actually, I believe I read that the first chapter of the book was actually an article that she wrote first, and then it got picked up to be a memoir. So I thought it's interesting that some people was able to pick up on that. You know, Michelle has also written a bunch of articles. If you actually Google search her, she has a bunch of articles that she writes about commentary, about being a musician, about her identity, and that kind of stuff. Reasons why people gave this book a high rating, which I've already kind of shared, is it had a very honest view about being a caretaker. It was very cathartic for people to read who have been a caretaker, and reading someone's experience and journey, all the highs and lows of doing that. And again, people really enjoyed the Asian American experience, the Korean American experience, and having that struggle of being raised in America with a more traditional and Asian parent. Why I think you should read this book, you should read it, is if you love memoirs, because that's why I read it. If you love to read a slice of a mother-daughter relationship, and also if you want to read about the experience of being a caretaker. Either it's something you haven't experienced it and you want to experience it, or it's something you have experienced and you want to have you want to like read a story about it. Now I'll share how this book made me feel, because as always, if you ask me a year, a day, 5 years from now, I probably won't remember what the book actually was about, but I remember how a book will make me feel. So this book, Crying in H-Mart by Zauner, it made me feel appreciative of my mom. You know, me and my mom growing up, we had a lot of clashes, and you know, to this day we still do. But now as I'm in my 30s, I think she's learned to accept me for me as a woman I have become and becoming. And I've also accepted her that she's not going to change, and that's okay. So it made me really appreciate my mom, and I'm really glad that this book came into my life because of that. Thank you for watching until the end of my review for Crying in H-Mart by Zauner. If you read this book, I'd love to hear what you thought down below. And next book I'm going to read, and I think I've mentioned this book twice now, but it just keeps staying on my not to be finished yet, but my goal is to finish every book, is Hooked. This book is about our addiction to food and how the industry has made us that way intentionally. It's not that it's a bad book, it's just that it reads very textbooky, and it's been hard for me to pick up, especially when there's so many other books that I pick up from the library as well. However, I'm going on a trip for a few days, so I'm bringing this on the plane, so hopefully I'll be forced to finish it. As always, thank you for watching until the end of my video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!